Okay, if you can hear my voice, say ah. If you can hear my voice, say so. If you hear my voice, say co. How's it going, folks? This is Pat from Asphalt Green's Recess Enhancement Program, here with another instructional video for you, this time for our game So Co. Okay? Before we hop into any game though, we of course need to do a safety check. So before we start any game and after we finish every game, we always want to make sure that we and our students are washing our hands for at least 20 seconds, okay? And we also want to make sure that our hands are going absolutely nowhere near our face. And if we have to cough or sneeze, we of course just want to dab right into the elbow. I tend to sneeze 3 times in a row, so usually it's be dab, dab, dab. I know everyone's a little bit different though. And of course, we always want to make sure that everyone is standing 6 feet apart from one another at all times so that everyone is properly social distanced, okay? And once you finish your safety check, you're good to go. So if you can give me 2 thumbs up if you're ready to get started, let's hop into So Co. So I know I just said it, but what's the name of the game? I think it might be So Co, right? Right. So folks, those motions and sounds will make a lot more sense as we go into the rules of the game. But let's just do a brief overview of So Co. So it's a circle game that can be played really anywhere that you can form a circle. And just so long as students can stay 6 feet apart, you'll be good, all right? It's a great game for students from 3rd grade all the way up through 8th grade or students within that age range and ability level. It's super safe because, again, students will be standing 6 feet apart from one another and there's really no equipment being shared or used. And so students will be able to, for the most part, stay in their spot and just, remain socially distant from everyone. On top of that, as with all rep games, the game is super, super fun. Students are going to be trying to keep a pattern up as a group, and if they make a mistake, well, there's some silly consequences and it can get a little competitive, so it's a great, great time. So safety and fun, those are the 2 things that we want to happen, and So Co has got it, all right? But let's get into the details of the game. And as always, we like to rep it out when we do that, so we'll start with R, ready, right? So we want to make sure that our game space is ready for So Co. So the play area, well, we need to take a look at it and make sure that we can form a circle in which students will be able to stand 6 feet apart from one another, okay? And students will also be walking around that circle at some point, so you want to kind of create some space so students can do that 6 feet apart from one another as well, okay? Then once we've got the play space, we've got it all set up, we're taking a look at it, the space is good to go. We want to make sure that we're doing a safety sweep and removing any items that might pose a safety risk to you or your students, okay? And we also want to take a look at any items that can't be moved and think about how we can work around them when the game is being played, okay? Once you've done that, you can lay down any equipment that you might need. As I said, So Co doesn't need any equipment, but if you want to throw down cones or tape to designate your boundaries for your play area, that is totally okay, and you can make sure to do that. Then, once your play area is set up, you've designated the boundaries, you've laid out the cones and the tape, and you feel like you're going to be able to keep socially distant throughout, well, you can gather up all of your students and have them circle up in one giant circle standing 6 feet apart. And you can use the attention grabber that I used at the beginning of the video in order to get their attention. So you can say, if you hear my voice, give me ah. If you hear my voice, give me so. If you hear my voice, give me co. If you hear my voice, let's circle up, stand 6 feet apart from one another. Once you have students gathered up and standing in a circle, standing 6 feet apart from one another, that means that you're ready to hop into your explanation of the game, okay? So whenever we're explaining a game, we always want to make sure that we're using a loud and clear voice so that all students can hear and understand us. We also want to make sure that as we're giving the instructions for the game, that we're asking students specific questions about those instructions. So a suggestion that we would have for you is asking, well, what happens if you make a mistake? And another one might be, well, what are you supposed to do when you have to say right? And that'll make a little bit more sense as we go through the instructions. So I'll go through those right now and you can follow along in your PDF copy of them or online on our website. So the first rule of ASO-KO is something you've already had students do, and that is to circle up and stand 6 feet apart from one another. The next thing that you want to do is you want to designate one student as the leader, okay? So you can pick who that student is, or they can volunteer, however you want to approach it. That leader is going to start off the game, okay? And there are going to be 3 things that every person is going to have to keep in mind, okay? And that is so, and ko. So the leader is going to start off, and they are going to say to someone on their right in the circle, ah. And when they're doing that, they're going to put their hand over their stomach. Could be either hand. So they say, ah. The person who was just told, ah, will then put their hand over their head, again, either hand, and turn to the person on the right and say, so. The person who is just told so will then point at somebody across the circle and say, ko. That person who is then pointed at will then begin the pattern anew, okay? So once they were pointed at, they're going to turn to their right, put their hand over their stomach and say, ah. That person will then put their hand over their head and say, so, to somebody on their right. And then that person will then point across the circle and say, ko, okay? And the pattern will keep going and going and going until somebody makes a mistake. Then, once somebody makes a mistake, the whole circle will say, yam zing. And then the person who made the mistake will exit the circle will close up, and that person who made the mistake will then walk around the circle, staying 6 feet apart from one another at all times, but will walk around the circle until the end of the game. And the end of the game comes when there are only 2 students left, right? And that means that there are 2 winners at the end of the game. And that is ASO-KO. So that's an explanation of the rules for ASO-KO. So how about we talk a little bit about how we can play the game so that students are abiding by those rules, and how we can play the game so as to keep students interested in it, okay? But before we can do that, I think we need to gather up again. So if you hear my voice, give me an ah. If you hear my voice, give me a so. If you hear my voice, give me a ko. And if you hear my voice, let's gather up and stand 6 feet apart from one another, okay? So before you even hop into the game, we would suggest you practice, all right? So practice the phrases and the motions associated with those phrases, okay? That way, everyone is set up for success, and that way the game runs smoothly throughout, both for you and for your students, okay? What you can then do is you can hop into some modifications, okay? So you can start off slowly, make sure that all of the students really, are comfortable with everything and kind of get into a flow with the game. Then what you can do is you can have a timed round, okay? So you can see how many times you can get it around the circle without making a mistake and have a time, set a record, and then consistently try and break that record, okay? What you can then do after that, if say students are crushing it, they're looking for another challenge, they're looking to do more, well, you can have 2 students start off the game. So there's 2 ahs, 2 so's, and 2 ko's going on at all times. And then watch as students get so into it, making mistakes here and there, and just having an all-around great time, okay? And as always, what we would suggest is to remind every student, stay 6 feet apart from one another because safety is key, okay? So folks, that's the end of our tip list, which means that we're at the end of the rep model and therefore the end of our video, okay? But before we go, let's make sure that we gather up one last time. So if you hear my voice, give me an ah. If you hear my voice, give me a so. If you hear my voice, give me a ko. I just want to thank you folks for watching another instructional video from us here at Asphalt Green. I hope you find it useful. Hope you find it fun playing the game with your students, and I ask that you stay tuned for more videos of games and tips from us here, and we'll catch you the next time.